Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel on esports and revenue diversification. We've got Matthew Woods, Damian, I'm not going to take a crack at that last name with one like mine. I don't want to mess it up. And Justin. I would love to go around and kind of ask each of you to run us through your background. So, Matthew, you want to take us through first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. I am Matthew. I am the CEO and co-founder of AFK Creators and AFK Pros, which are agencies specialized in talent management and representation for gaming content creators and esports professionals around the world.
Awesome. Damian?
Cool. I'm Damian. I'm the managing director for the Icon Agency, and the Icon Agency represents gamers, streamers, and esports athletes, and we help grow their businesses.
And Justin.
Hey, so Justin with Misfits Gaming Group, SVP of Partnerships. So really bringing in brands that want to work with our teams and talent and how we can help drive revenue in those angles.
Totally. Justin, I'm going to come straight back to you because I know partnerships is a huge part of how we think about revenue diversification. You know, what's the strategy behind diversifying revenue at Misfits right now?
Any and all of it? No. So for us, really, looking at how we can diversify lots of different ways. There's all sorts of things you can do with passive revenue, where there might be things that you can generate revenue off of ad space on some of your sites, ad space off of some of your open inventory on live streams that you're partnered with your influencers. So really, like any and all ways that we're trying to look at how partners want to try to tap into esports. Sometimes they don't have big 6-7 figure budgets. That doesn't mean they can't work with influencers, work with a special project, or do something that's a little more scaled down. So really any and everything.
Got it. And so one of the ways you're diversifying is figuring out ways for people at various, I've been playing a lot of poker lately, so various buy-in sizes, helping them find the right spot for them.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of brands like hear about esports and say we're told to get into esports, but they don't know where to start to get into esports, and they're just like, hey, they come to us and say, what do we do? So, we want to try to figure out what their goals are and their initiatives, and a lot of times, you can't just jump right into, hey, let's do a high 6-figure deal. They've never done esports before, let alone maybe even a sponsorship. So there's a lot of crawl, walk, run approaches that you can take that allow brands to test out smaller initiatives, whether that's working directly with an influencer, maybe sponsored streams, a bunch of posts, making content specifically with that influencer. So there's lots of different ways you can tackle it.
Yeah, Matthew, when it comes to revenue diversification at AFK, what does your approach look like?
Yeah, so we obviously are focused on the content creators and streamers specifically. So they have multiple revenue generation streams, and esports typically isn't one of them unless they're a professional player. So it's really through brand partnerships outside of the revenue they make from their community and from their platforms, which drive a lot of the opportunities for them. So often we're looking a bit like was mentioned earlier by Justin, like we're looking at all revenue streams that we can explore, both passive and active, to find ways in which they can, grow their brand as also grow their revenue streams.
Yeah, and then Damian, I think that Icon has a really interesting role when it comes to these questions. Can you explain a little bit about how Icon works and then get into the revenue questions?
Sure. So, Icon, for all intents and purposes, is a tried and true talent agency. So, think of us, on the same levels as a CAA, UTA, and so basically, what we're tasked with is representing individual creators and growing their businesses and their revenue. When it comes to revenue diversification, it's still, probably 99% of that revenue is going to be coming from the tried and true brand deals. Those are mainly what creators in the space are interested in. What's interesting to me in diversification is thinking about other ideas, outside the box ideas that creators aren't necessarily thinking of. The low hanging fruit is always merch. Developing merch lines for talent, and connecting them with the right merch company that can fulfill those. But really kind of thinking about what else they can launch. What's a consumer product play? What's something they can do? How can we cross them over into some traditional media opportunities? That's very exciting for me. My background originally is in traditional entertainment, representing actors, and so I kind of like to merge all the different dots and kind of see. And I really look at the gaming creators as entertainers and kind of the next generation of stars. And I think that we're still in the very the wave is cresting. We're not quite at full capacity, which is very exciting. And so I think over time we're going to see a lot more of what we call gaming talent, streaming talent crossover into other mainstream media and have their own businesses, and that's what's really exciting for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one way that the business has shifted, and obviously it's been a massive adjustment for all of us, and we're doing this panel online, but the shift to doing so many things remotely, how would y'all say that affected, revenue models and your business? Matthew, do you want to go first there?
Yeah, I mean, for our business, it really hasn't affected things at all. The talent that we work with, at least on the content creator side, they're digital creators, right? So their revenue streams are almost the same. Actually attending events and physical events often could be a revenue loss for them in terms of opportunities, unless it's definitely something worth doing. So really, we've just seen growth in numbers as everyone's remote and viewership has gone up, and that's just increased the income they can earn, as well as the brands that are looking to experiment and test in the space. I think what we have seen as well is a lot of the pro players that we represent and work with, they are now having a lot more time, I would say, not necessarily masses more time, but time to invest in streaming, as well as other forms of content creation, and really understanding that they can build brands and businesses outside of just the esports element. And often, in the past, the orgs have been supportive, but even more so now, we've seen a lot of support from esports teams in helping these players do that.
Justin, is that something you've seen at Misfits in terms of your pro players getting more interested in content creation?
Yeah, we've actually had a couple wanting to make more content with us, asking to be in more stuff. I think you're right. I think as events started to come back, you saw that kind of it took time away because they were traveling outside of where they normally have their setups and stuff. But I guess in the beginning of the pandemic, yeah, we saw that. So from a revenue standpoint, like Matt said, I mean, viewership traffic was sky high on Twitch and YouTube, and everyone's streaming. So you saw a lot of individuals capitalize on that, when they had the time to do it. So
totally. And then, Damian, I'm wondering what Icon is thinking about in terms of, although it was smaller than people thought it was going to be, PAX took place last weekend. Riot Games had this no audience, but they had the studio open last weekend. Things are opening up a little bit. What's the strategy headed into? I've been hearing people say post-COVID, and I think that's really optimistic, but like post-lockdown. What's the strategy headed into post-lockdown?
Yeah, well, for us, obviously there's sort of two sides. There's obviously the online and streaming, which kind of takes most priority. But we miss the human element, we miss the human community, and we know that that's always a big aspect of this business. And so for us, as soon as we're able to, obviously here in the U.S., we kind of flared up, so we're kind of it's kind of in a funky place. But for us, as soon as we're kind of able to do that and our talent are comfortable, it really comes down to that as well. Want to make sure everyone is fully comfortable, and also our staff as well. We're very sensitive to how people feel. But as soon as stuff is able to open up more and more, we definitely want to be there. for us, we wanted to get our name out there and to build our reputation. And so one of the ways to do that is to be prominent at events, be where the talent are. And so as soon as we're able to, post COVID, that we're able to do that.
Shifting gears a little bit, I'm interested in, things that y'all have worked on in the last 2 years or so, maybe just like big career highlights, a project that that serves this goal of what we're talking about, revenue diversification. So I'm not looking for you to tell me about like that time you worked with Logitech, right? I see Justin thinking, I see Matthew thinking. Damian, do you want to go first? Do you have anything that's jumping to mind?
Sure. So I'll, to kind of relate it back to gaming specifically. So this is something that my team had sort of worked on previously, but Myth did, a really great deal with Samsung, and sort of culminated with a commercial shoot with Khalid and Millie Bobby Brown that was really, really cool. And really kudos to the Icon sales team and talent team and pretty much everyone at Icon for making that happen, because it was definitely a beast. And it's really cool for me to see talent in our space getting that recognition and kind of being on par with those mainstream talent. I mean, like we've all probably seen Stranger Things, and we're all, at least for me, I'm a big big Millie fan. Love Stranger Things, and same with Khalid. So it's just really great to see that crossover and to have those things elevated. So for the Icon team, it's one of it's a great feather in our cap, and want to see more and more of that. So
yeah, were Millie Bobby Brown and Khalid on there, and then they added Myth, or the other way, or can you tell us?
I'm not sure exactly how the sausage. I'm not sure exactly how the sausage was made on that one, but it's a very big multi-prong campaign. As a company as big as Samsung, there's always a million moving parts, and so I'm not sure sort of which came together first, but the final product is pretty amazing, and that ad you can see on YouTube.
Totally. Matthew, are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I think rather than maybe share something that we've definitely like spearheaded in the last 2 years from a diversification point, I think one thing I'll highlight is 2 of our talents. Oh gosh, phone's going off. 2 of our talents in who are based in South Korea, LS and Nemesis, they actually set up a podcast during COVID that's been hugely popular called League Nightmares. And that was because really in the League of Legends space, there wasn't a lot of this type of content. So they saw an opportunity to diversify and put this content out across platforms they never were on before, like Spotify and Apple. And yeah, that's done extremely well for them. And it's meant that, supporting them, we can then take that to new brands in new ways and explore those revenue channels that otherwise didn't exist. And what's been really great is, they're the creators, they're the people who can come up with these ideas. But really, like on theme, like we've seen buy-in from both of their esports organizations, T1 and Junji, as well as ourselves, to kind of support them how they're doing this, because it really is a case in a game like League of Legends where people are now inventing content where there's been a long stale period of people doing the same content over and over again. I think that's really great, not just for themselves as individual content creators, but the actual, Riot Games as the developer, simply because otherwise, that's where viewership starts to decline, where content becomes stale. So that's been quite exciting to see over the last 6 months they do that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love LS, and I haven't checked out this podcast yet. So as soon as this is over, you said it's everywhere, like everywhere I'd find a podcast?
YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you can find a minute, you should be able to find it.
Beautiful. And then Justin, what you got?
Man, so for us, it's something that I worked on myself. There was a piece of content or potential content opportunity for our influencers that we we pitched and sold into Hasbro something different, that they wanted to get into esports, which they've already done some great stuff with TSM and stuff like that. But we really wanted to create almost more like individual challenges that the influencers themselves could like put out on TikToks and their own kind of stuff. So we put together this influencer-driven content program. It went extremely well, and it was from that we kind of launched our Misfits agency, where we said, hey, like we work with a lot of these brands. We can bring unique opportunities where influencers are starting commercials and content with these brands. That's different than what your traditional esports team does. So instead of selling a sponsorship to them, to Nerf, we basically sold these 3 influencers, making content for them across all their socials, YouTube, you name it. We had like a big TV shoot, big commercial shot, and everything like that. So it was kind of our first foray into what these 2 gentlemen do on a regular basis. So it was fun for us to kind of see that growth and do something a little different.
Sure. I think that you've brought us to an interesting question about the relationships between teams and agencies. So I'm going to stay with you for a moment. You mentioned Misfits and Misfits Agency. How do those 2 things work together?
So the Misfits Agency, we're going to change the name because it's very confusing to people. They're like, wait, how do you guys work with both? So Misfits Gaming Group, like the overarching entity, owns a bunch of esports teams, content creators that we have under contract, and individuals that we create content with, whether that's like case by case or on an annual contract. But then we also started another arm of that umbrella, if you will, that Misfits Gaming Group umbrella, that's going to basically be similar to like an Icon or a CAA, where we're going to represent influencers fully, and it'll be completely separate of Misfits. Like we're not going to push talent to us if there's another better offer or something that's better for that influencer. So we're gonna separate those 2 lines of businesses. There'll be completely different people working on both sides of the aisle there. And then we also, from working on that Nerf deal, we signed our first actual like full-time representation for a brand. So we showed them all the stuff we did, and so it'll be announced pretty soon. But we'll have a new brand that we're representing from that agency side too. So in esports. So some interesting stuff there.
That's super interesting. Damian, is that similar for how Icon works, or different, or both? Neither.
It's sort of a complex and sort of nuanced thing. I think we're seeing a lot of orgs sort of move in this direction. I think that Swift Media is the holding company for Icon and TSM and also Blitz. I think that I worked in the MCN space, multi-channel network space, for a long time, and we sort of had this kind of push and pull with like, do we represent the talent? Do we not? Like, how does this work? How do we have we kind of have these sort of internal conflicts. And so, I think we're seeing a lot of orgs do, sort of what Swift Media did, probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and spun off Icon. And we are wholly separate legal entity. We have almost no, little to no crossover. We obviously, we're sister companies, and we do represent a lot of talent that are on TSM, but we are a fully licensed talent agency. So that really kind of pertains to the state of California, state of New York. To procure work for individuals. And it's really smart to do that, because, you basically take away that conflict of interest. We're seeing a lot more orgs trying to figure that out and try to figure out what the best way is. And so, the best equivocation I can really give is sort of how the MCNs worked. And I was in that space for quite a while, and so I know all the pain points. I've seen this movie before, and so this is kind of the natural evolution, is to sort of separate the influencer business from the esports and apparel and org business.
Right, that totally makes sense. You said you have worked with this before with MCNs. What were like your main, so you're coming at this for your second time, what were your main takeaways from that first experience? What do you think that our industry could Are there hurdles that we might be able to clear if we listen to people with experience?
Yeah, it's really difficult because the MCNs inherently were, and esports orgs are this way as well. They're about promoting the org and promoting the name, and using talent to do that. The sort of inherent conflict, at least in the MCN business, was if you worked on the talent side, you obviously you don't wholly represent the talent. You kind of probably have that mentality, and a lot of people that are the agents and managers of digital today did work at the multi-channel networks. So I think the smartest thing to do is to spin it off. Other companies such as I believe Fullscreen, end up having a management group within Fullscreen, that I think it probably worked, but it's also hard. You have the same name, you're at the same company, you're in the same office, and what's difficult is that you have your brand sales team being like, okay, I want so and so to do this deal for $10,000, but in your head, that their going rate is $20,000. So you have to negotiate internally, and it took a lot of back and forth to really iron out those kinks, because we, as talent people, were always at odds with the salespeople, but we all have the same goal: get the deal done. And the best way to do it is to listen to the talent team, listen to how the talent do things, because we're not crazy. We're trying to get this done. And so, in my experience, I've become a politician or a diplomat. Like it's kind of, I picked up all these really weird skills on how to talk to people, how to get things done. And it's really, kind of scrappy out in the MCN world kind of helped that. So I think to kind of answer the question overall, it really is spinning it off and having that conflict of interest sort of abated. And just have really honest conversations with the org, because you're going to have kinks. You're still going to have some hanging chads, so to speak. There's going to be some ongoing deals that are probably, that they are going to play out for the next 12 months, 24 months. You kind of have to sort of work through. And especially, when it comes to negotiating org contracts, like that's going to be, those are fun conversations. But having a totally separate business kind of really helps alleviate that. And that was my advice to the MCN space. And we kind of saw that with Big Frame and Awesomeness TV. Big Frame was the management company that was under the Awesomeness TV umbrella. So I spent time at Fullscreen, Awesomeness, and CD71. And CD71 totally spun off their management business. They sort of scrapped all that. So spinning it off, kind of the separation is the best way to go. You take away that conflict of interest, and you just have to have executives that are very understanding and and they can understand how things work and understand it. And you also, as a talent representation, your talent representative, your fiduciary duty is to your talent. And so having an executive team on the other side, the holding companies for esports orgs and the agencies understand that is extremely helpful. And we have a very great executive team at Swift that wholly understands how all this works, and it's been very smooth. So spinning off, that's the answer.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Matthew,
I'd like to jump. Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. So, yeah, I mean, I'll play the devil's advocate on this one. So, I mean, I think the licensing and the spinning off makes entire sense, especially when you have people that are not working for both entities. But obviously the subject of this panel is esports teams and revenue diversification. So I think the big question for me is, what was the interest at the very beginning? You're talking about conflict of interest. What was the interest in creating a talent management agency? Was it the fact that, you found yourself as an esports organization managing the talent anyway? Or was it, we actually can't diversify our revenue streams here as an esports org in whatever the market was like 2 years ago, but we do know there is revenue generation over there with talent. So we're going to create a talent agency and make money that way off the talent. Because for me, if I think of like the biggest successful esports orgs right now, they're becoming less and less competitive esports teams as we used to know them, and more media brands. And obviously media brands need content creators. So I'll throw that to you, Justin, to begin with.
I think when we looked at it initially, it was a little bit of both. So we said, okay, we're bringing in potential revenue to influencers that were on our team that had categories open that their own talent team wasn't bringing. So we said, hey, we have a lot of relationships in this space. We don't have every category for them, but here's an interesting play where we might be able to do a specific piece of content or a specific, program that caters, just to them or just to a couple of them. So we said, okay, well, there's something there that we're not really tapping into because we're just looking at initially sponsorship brand deals, right? And on top of that, then you're saying, okay, well, if we can leverage, and I agree with you, I think by looking at, for a lot of esports orgs that are successful now, the majority of their eyeballs, the content, what they're doing is with their influencers and creators versus the pro players, right? Pro players' jobs to play, practice, win games. Content creators, influencers' job is to entertain your talent, right? Entertain your viewers. So you have a lot of brands know, hey, like, well, we know the influencers more than the pros. Like, there's probably, I bet you brands can name more influencers than they can pro players. For when you're talking to a lot of brands when you go pitch them on stuff. So they've all heard like the Ninjas and Valkyries and these people, but if you tell them like, hey, do you know who like Abadaje is for 100 Thieves, who they just won the NALCS, and he came over from Europe and changed that team around, arguably MVP almost, they'd be like, no, who's that? Like they don't, you know what I mean? Like a lot of brands don't know those players. So I think that's where, to Matt's answer, there's a little bit of both. We saw that like, hey, there's opportunities here that we can bring to our talent that don't need to be full-fledged sponsorships. And at the same time, we know that this is what more brands are leaning toward when it comes to spending dollars with entertainers. So that's basically where we said, all right, this is already kind of happening in the space. And as Damian said, like you're seeing a lot of esports orgs, that are either buying up talent agencies or spinning off their own. You're saying, okay, well, this is kind of where things are shifting. So if you don't get involved early on, you're pretty much going to be left behind and trying to figure out how to navigate that space later.
I think that's lot to unpack in that answer, but really insightful. Damian, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Just circle around the question.
I mean, it's a big question, and I think it's something that a lot of people have asked, looking at, the direction that businesses are going. And I think it's why we're all here, right? Is like, we're folks uniquely qualified to talk about this question, but it's a really big question. Sorry, Damian, I asked you if you had more to add, and then I talked over you.
No worries. Yeah, I think the thing that I would add is that, it also has to do with, like everyone was saying here, is sort of a change in market. I think you potentially could leave some money on the table, as we're seeing a lot of, obviously the goal of esports orgs is partnerships, large scale partnerships, not necessarily focus on the individual creator. So there's that aspect of the market changing, the influencer business growing, in a really big way on Twitch. Before this, I'm kind of from the YouTube space, and so I've been working there for quite a while, and so influencer marketing is very second nature to me, and so it's growing more on the Twitch side. And then I think it's also relationships. I think as you're seeing, the pro players retire. And start moving into okay, what's my second act? And they're streaming, they're growing their influencer business. It's a way for orgs to also keep those relationships close. Because if you don't, if you don't necessarily have, if a player goes and signs to another agency, the esports org, doesn't necessarily see an upside of that. And so it's also a way to sort of keep the relationship with talent and keep it close, while also providing a new level of service and a new business. And but for me, I really think it has to do with slight change in the marketplace, because these big partnership deals take a lot of work, take a lot of energy. They're really great, but there's also a lot of money in between with the individual talent.
And then that makes sense. And then Matthew, how does AFK navigate the space where like you've got Icon, you've got like being related in some way, the sister company. We have these sister agencies coming up. How does AFK navigate? You know, a streamer comes to you and says, I mean, you should tell me what the streamers are saying about this, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, I definitely think Justin was right in saying that was a circled answer, because, you know, I think what it sounds to me is like esports teams, you know, I can't speak for their business models and the market because, you know, I don't understand that as well as those guys do. But it clearly strikes me that like the fact that there is money on the table, whether it belongs to an esports team or not, like they want that to survive or to grow. How do we navigate the space? Well, I mean, no one's surprised by the fact that like content creators want to join orgs to make content. And because that is, in many of their eyes, like the aspiration to be on an org like TSM is the pinnacle of what their career could be. So, you know, when we work with orgs, it's very much about getting the best deal and the best contract for the creator, putting their interests first without any, you know, conflict of interest there, and just making sure that the individual is protected, whether a player or content creator, as well as our relationship with them, right? That's an important thing because I mean, I haven't never seen this from a tier 1 organization, but the lower you go down the tiers of esports organizations, the more complicated these contracts are between the orgs and the individuals, especially on the content creators, where the salaries these people might be getting paid by orgs is ultimately dependent on them doing sponsorship activities. So there really is no recognition of their value as content creators, their following, their promotion of the org, and being part of the family. It's much more, hey, we will pay you this amount guaranteed. You need to do X for the brands that we sign. So that's a little bit of a tricky thing because it's sometimes hard to swallow for content creators, and it can come across, if not eloquently put, that it's almost they're being used by the orgs to fulfill the needs of their brand partners that they've missold. So that's kind of how we navigate things. You know, we have fantastic relationships with almost all the teams out there, so that really helps us to, you know, to have a really sensible discussion around these things. I think one thing though that I will go back to, which I wasn't mentioned by Justin or Damian, is, you know, when players do want to leave, how can they leave, right? You know, if I am the best player on TSM's Valorant roster and I do not want to be there anymore, how is my career not inhibited from moving to another esports org? Who controls the buyout? Who accepts the deal? Like those elements, at the end of the day, like the parent company is the same and it may have the same CEO. So, you know, I think those are the sort of conflicts of interest that can play out whether or not, you know, everything is being followed by the rules.
Right. And Damian, that would be a situation that's really ameliorated by that like complete separation that you talked about, right? And how hard it is to navigate these kinds of thorny questions if there isn't that separation.
Yeah, it's, you know, we haven't had that that scenario arise yet. You know, we're all still kind of working out the kinks. You know, but from my perspective, you know, most of the orgs are extremely talent friendly, and you know they'll do their best to figure out what the best policy is. You know, because you don't get the best out of people when you sort of turn the screws on a contract. Obviously, you can if you're legally allowed to do that. But for the most part, you know, my experience is most people are talent friendly. You know, back in my MCN days, not as much, but definitely, you know, there's usually willing to work with somebody, and you know, we haven't had that case where we've had to really duke it out yet. I hope we don't. But you know, as we're kind of navigating everything, we'll have to sort of figure that out in real time. You know, the thing is that we're we're all still writing the book right now on kind of how this works, which is thrilling and terrifying. So we don't fully know exactly what the future holds, but we'll just have to kind of take it on a case by case basis. But yes, that is something that could happen. But I overall I think that we'd be able to come to some sort of compromise on the best solution, just in the best interest of the talent.
Yeah, so we only have a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to get a couple of these audience questions. Justin, I'm going to kick this first one to you, and I'm happy to weigh in on it as well. But someone asks, we're seeing how vital streaming talent is to revenue at esports wars. Is there a bigger role available for pro rosters in content creation? So, Justin, how come you're not using Misfits pro players in your content?
Well, we do. But at the same time, like a lot of players' times are used up. Like pro players practice pretty much every day. They usually have scrims, film review sessions. They don't get a lot of time off. The days they do get off, the last thing they want to do is go run to a video shoot, photo shoot. Let me go stream this sponsored stream. They kind of want to do stuff on their own time. They all definitely stream more and do more stuff in the off season. Like all our guys are streaming on a lot of stuff right now. So I think during season, it's really hard on them to ask to fulfill. Like we usually use like a media day to bang out like a ton of projects for them. That stuff comes out way later in the year or mid season and stuff like that. It's just they're just very busy, and their job is to win competitive matches. Not like in my mind, like they're different than a lot of influencers. Now, if there's players who are interested in making content, by all means, we're going to work with them and say, hey, like, what are you interested in? What do you like to do? But a lot of players are like, hey, I want to put my head down, grind, play, get better, practice, and do all that stuff versus go to a video shoot. So it really comes down to the individual players for us. Like I'm not going to force our players to do content if they don't want to do content. It's not going to come out great. We'll probably have to reshoot it a bunch, and so it's like why waste the time there. So, but if they want to make the content great, we'll work with them and make it. That's the way we usually treat it with our pros. So we try to figure out what they like to do, what they want to do. And yeah, we use them when they want to do it, usually more in the off season. So now that we're out of pretty much every competitive league, we didn't go far in the playoffs in any of them. So they'll all be streaming more and making more content.
Awesome. Matthew, I've got another question for you. This question was asked in giant letters. I don't know how you did that, Carrie, but it's very cool. Are influencers getting too powerful? That question's for you, Matthew.
Yeah, I'll answer that. And then I've got, I want to spin something off what Justin said, which I think maybe,
of course,
I know TSM used to do, and it was fantastic. But anyway, to answer, are influencers becoming too powerful? I mean, you can't stop them. So, I mean, who can be the judge of that? I think you just look at every segment of society, and I think what is exciting, or what we should be all excited about, is the fact that these influencers that we're coming to mind and talking about today, if we mention any by name, they have relevance and kind of come from gaming and by nature, secondhand, often esports. And now they're proliferating in lifestyle, entertainment, music, films, at every opportunity. So are they becoming too powerful? No, I think they only have much further waves to go, so that their influence or power of influence is just as big as someone like Kim Kardashian or Kanye West. And I'm excited for that day, right? But going back to what Justin's, the question asked to Justin, and I mentioned TSM, that wasn't just for the sake that Damian's here, I think TSM did fantastic content around their pro players and teams. Back in like season 3 or 4 of League of Legends, it was all about the house, the training facility, their lifestyle, also, like before and after the matches. And I actually think like what they did, you can see today on Amazon Prime when you look at soccer teams, that the managers are in the dressing rooms and they're filming all of this content before the game and whatnot. And I just don't think enough esports will do that. And I think actually, if I was an esports team and I was looking at revenue diversification for the team, that is a way you can do it without, using influencers at all, and keeping it esports at the heart.
Matthew, this is a can of worms to open with like 5 minutes for us to go, but did you ever see Breaking Point?
Yeah, I did.
I think that might be why people don't make content like that anymore. That was rough.
Yeah, it feels sad, right?
That was a rough one to watch. Have you all seen that, Damian, Justin?
The good, bad, and ugly, right?
No, I haven't seen it.
I'll
have to check it out.
When I think about putting a camera in, I think it can be really compelling content, but I think the struggle that folks have is like, it can be really challenging to make it in a way that's brand safe and also like cover what's happening in an honest way. I can't remember which esports team it was, which I'm saying because I can remember, but I don't want to flame them, but they had done, some behind the scenes content of like a pretty rough conversation with their League of Legends team, and they like slapped a Bud Light logo on it and were like, put it out into the world, and it was like, it didn't go over great.
I think the difference
Justin,
is like, I think the difference is if you make content from a consumer standpoint to learn more about your team, where you might be able to get like media rights or distribution rights revenue versus commercial content using your influencers or pro players. So to me, those are two separate things. Like really in the world of like buckets of revenue, like Matt said, like there's a difference of revenue diversification like that. And that's something I think Misfits does a good job of. Like when we kind of like, for lack of a better term, had a big fumble at Worlds and had a chance to knock off the eventual champions up 2-1, we didn't shy away. We asked our players what happened. And we talked to them about it, and they walked through the game. Or when we had our supposed super team in the LEC, and we played horrible, we asked the players like, "What's the problem with the team?" And that to me is more like entertainment, where you're learning about the Oregon players. To me, unless you're doing like generic logo slaps, like you said, it could come across very poorly if you just slap a logo on it. That's not really a piece of content for a brand, like a commercial piece. So I think they're like two separate kind of buckets that you're looking to fill there, personally.
Totally. I wish we could talk about all of this stuff for so much longer, but I'm looking at the time, and I want to give everybody a chance to plug whatever you'd like. Everybody's got a little bit less than a minute. I'll go first, and then I'll kick it. I'm Taylor. Thanks for letting me moderate the panel with you all today. I'm the Director of Talent Management, head of the Evil Geniuses Creator Collective, and the easiest way to find me is on Twitter at TayAFK. Matthew, you want to go next?
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me. Pleasure. It's been great. I think this has been a really interesting panel. Hopefully the viewers agree. You can hit me up on LinkedIn or on Twitter, where my handle is Marios with an H in the middle there, TV.
Damian?
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me as well. We look forward to the future of Icon and with our creators, and continue to grow our business and grow our revenue and build our reputation out there. So thanks for having us. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me at Twitter and all social medias, and Discord at dscotch, Skotch. My last name is pronounced Skoczylas, by the way. You have Scotch, someone took it away from you. Now you're Skoczylas. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on. Glad to discuss, hearing Damian and Matt talk, who do this a lot more than Misfits starting out and getting into it. So love learning and listening to them. You can find me at LinkedIn, Justin Stefanovic, on Twitter, Big J Steph. So hit me up. Always open to have a conversation.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming to the panel. Thanks for submitting your questions, and enjoy the last discussion of today with ECI. Thanks so much for having us.
Bye, guys.